Back in March of 2015, a rather interesting hint about the return of a beloved character to the Zelda series was dropped in a Miiverse interview, of all places. To celebrate the release of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D on Nintendo 3DS, the Happy Mask Salesman was featured in an interview answering fan questions on the developer's behalf. The interview itself is rather interesting and gives some insight into some of Majora's unanswered questions. But in my opinion, the tease found in the Mask Salesman's closing statement is the interview's most interesting nugget. My, I've certainly been appearing all over the place these past few days. If this keeps going, maybe it wouldn't be a stretch to expect me to pop up in a new Zelda game too. I've got some new masks too, if you'd like to try them on. If I do make an appearance, I'm sure everyone will experience such happiness. Believe in your strengths. Believe. Kilton is one of Breath of the Wild's most interesting original characters. He's a small imp of a man, obsessed with monsters and runs a monster part shop called Fang and Bone. By night, he travels around the settlements of Hyrule spreading his appreciation for monsters. And by day, he is nowhere to be found. See, I don't think things were always set to be this way, however. One of the primary wares available at Kilton's shop are the monster masks, a set of 4 masks that allow the wearer to blend in with monsters by appearance or scent, leaving the monsters not intelligent enough to tell the difference. Most of the time. Bokoblin, Moblin, Lizalfos, and Lionel masks are available for purchase at Kilton's shop. But doesn't it seem a little odd? Breath of the Wild contains these 4 masks, with even more based on utility and Zelda Legacy masks being introduced through amiibo support and later down the line through DLC. Pair this with that comment from the 2015 interview with the Happy Mask Salesman. He mentions he wouldn't be surprised if he appeared in a new Zelda game, and that he's got some new masks too, if you'd like to try them on. I think when taking this information together, it points towards Kilton being a replacement for a scrapped reappearance of the Happy Mask Salesman in Breath of the Wild. At one point in development, some of Kilton's most popular wares might have actually belonged to a different shop, the Happy Mask Shop. Whether this means that during development both Kilton and the Happy Mask Salesman coexisted at one point, or if the Happy Mask Salesman's removal was a direct result of Kilton's creation, I don't know. But I believe the evidence points towards the Happy Mask Salesman at one point being a part of this game, before his role was repurposed into Kilton, leaving him on the cutting room floor. In his place, monster masks were crafted into the story of Kilton's obsession, and other masks were reduced to amiibo rewards, DLC items, or cut content. I hope one day the developers can blow open the door of Kilton's development history, and how he came to be, because based on this theory, it seems like it might be a fascinating story. Let's talk about the character himself now though, because as interesting as his origin is, he himself is even more interesting. The thing is, Breath of the Wild gives us a good amount of information about Kilton, but nothing substantial enough to seal the deal completely on who he is and where he came from. That's why today I've decided I want to look into 3 theories on the backstory of this monster-based merchant. Kilton is included under the Hylian character section in Creating a Champion, implying that he himself, despite appearance, is actually Hylian. He is a smaller fellow with a bluish-grayish complexion and clothes designed to look like a monster. As mentioned earlier, he runs the Fang and Bone monster part shop, where he accepts monster parts in return, handing out his own currency called Mon, which can be used to buy his exclusive monster-based wares. He makes his home originally in the Kala region's Skull Lake, a body of water filled with strange purple plants. Some travelers throughout Hyrule seem to have known Kilton set up shop at Skull Lake, and tip Link off on where to find him. Kilton even has the mercenaries of Akala stable after him in the A Shady Customer side quest. Like I said, the character has a good amount of information available at the surface level, but now that we've had some recap on the man behind the Fang and Bone operation, let's dive a little deeper and look at some possible origins for this peculiar merchant. So back before the release of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, when we were all still speculating about Astor's true identity, a few people brought up the idea that maybe Astor is actually Breath of the Wild's monster merchant, Kilton. Now at the time I wrote this off as a silly notion. There could be no connection between the two. Right?
6 months later.
Oh my, how the tables have turned. Astor was one of the most interesting pieces Age of Calamity brought to the table upon its release. Because even though the game ended up taking place in a branch-off timeline of Breath of the Wild, the existence of Astor in Age of Calamity means that he was present in the main timeline of Breath of the Wild as well, even if events didn't play out quite the same for him. Let me explain. In Age of Calamity, Astor states that Harbinger Ganon found him and selected him as his servant.
How The great Calamity Ganon selected me!
As a reminder, no such catalyst was able to work independently of Ganon's main form in Breath of the Wild 100 years ago, as none existed. The malice that followed the time-traveling Terrako back to the past and possessed the old Terrako of that time is Harbinger Ganon. This change sent a man who would have continued to live his life uninfluenced by Calamity Ganon's hate, and instead focus on his love of monsters, eventually taking up the name Kilton and traveling Hyrule researching and developing monster-based products, down a very different and much darker path. It's in the same vein as Master Koga and the Yiga clan's change of heart, except reversed. Terrako and Ganon's interference in the past changed the course of history. What was originally a man with a love for monsters turned merchant was now, due to this meddling, transformed by Ganon's hatred into a servant of his will. A key piece in Ganon's attempt to rebalance the chessboard after Terrako's time traveling pulled the odds out of his favor. Ganon corrupted this man and influenced his fascination with monsters into a full-on servitude of calamity and ambitions of grandeur. This even matches up with Kilton's appearance as a shorter and wrinkly fellow, since old characters in Breath of the Wild are depicted as much shorter in stature. And Kilton and Astor being one and the same would put him at around at least 120 years of age, similar to the other elders of Breath of the Wild such as Impa, Pura, and Robbie. The main thing holding this theory back is the existence of the monster masks in Age of Calamity. While Kilton is not name-dropped, the in-game description of the items do mention them being made by a merchant at Skull Lake. I personally don't buy into this origin for Kilton, but I do think it's a fascinating one and really fun to explore. In the side quest of Royal Recipe, Link is tasked with finding some recipes lost within Hyrule Castle. When you do come across the recipes in Hyrule Castle Library, you'll find that one of the recipes is for Princess Zelda's favorite fruitcake, and the other for the Chancellor of Hyrule's favorite dish, Monster Cake. Now, this Monster Cake and its notes about the Chancellor come off as more than a little suspicious. I've personally always seen this recipe as more of a wink and a nod to Chancellor Cole, the secret evil Chancellor of Hyrule that appears in the Legend of Zelda Spirit tracks. But another alternative way to interpret this monster cake-loving Chancellor could be that his alter ego is actually the same monster-obsessed fanboy we know, Kilton. The Chancellor could have been one of the few residents of Hyrule Castle to escape the wrath of Calamity Ganon. Seeing the kingdom he once served reduced to a state of ruin, he could have given up on his role as a member of Hyrule's royal court and fully embraced his hobby as a monster merchant. Again, the presence of monster masks coming out of Skull Lake in Age of Calamity does kind of hurt this theory's chances, but unlike with the last theory, this mysterious figure making monster masks in Skull Lake could theoretically still be the Chancellor, simultaneously running his monster business as a hobby on the side. For this next one, I'm going to need you to stay with me, because I want to bring to mind what might sound like a crazy hypothetical. Something about Kilton's design has always stood out to me. Of course, there's a lot to stand out in his design. The lack of regular Hylian qualities, his strangely shaped head, and even his white whiskers. But I'm talking about his garb, specifically his hood. Kilton's hood looks very similar to the monster masks that he produces, and is even called out in creating a champion as a monstrous garb. So I think his clothing might also be a mask designed to blend in with enemies, just as the masks he sells in his shop are. The only problem is that we know no monster in Breath of the Wild that looks similar to the cloak Kilton himself wears. And that's because I think we haven't met this enemy in Breath of the Wild's Hyrule. At least not yet. Have you ever wondered where Kilton goes during the day? Of course, he escapes the sunlight to go unseen by regular Hylian citizens, but where does he go? Fly his shop around with his air balloon all day until it's time to return to the surface? No, for a man like him who seems to thrive off the darkness, I don't think the sky would be his first choice. What if instead of going up during the day, Kilton actually goes down to a hidden kingdom? If you haven't yet seen my video creating our Breath of the Wild 2, first of all, I encourage you to go watch it as I believe it is one of the best videos on my channel, and second, in that video, I explore the possibility of Breath of the Wild 2 introducing us to a second kingdom below Hyrule, and that's the key to this theory. Where does Kilton go during the day? Underground to a forgotten kingdom, maybe even his homeland. And what's up with Kilton's monster hood? It's a monster mask design, just of a monster that only appears underground. The hood actually bears a decent resemblance to the Goria in my eyes, with its pointed ears in the back and dark blue color. This happens to be one of the enemies I speculated might replace the main enemy trio in Breath of the Wild in the Creating Our Breath of the Wild 2 video, so I thought this could be the source of Kilton's design. Now, I know I probably went a little bit crazy with this theory, but you know, sometimes you just have to go all in, no matter how out there it sounds. Yes, there is a fourth theory, but this is by far the most boring, yet sensible theory of the day, which is that Kilton is just an ordinary monster-obsessed dude. There is no special connection to past characters, no Easter egg hinting at a once higher station, and no crazy conspiracy theories that he's actually a Zonai from underground and based his hood on an enemy that doesn't actually exist in this iteration of Hyrule yet. He's just a dude, an eccentric, monster-loving dude that was created as a merchant that could combine Breath of the Wild's new masks with the use for monster parts found throughout the game. In a lot of ways, I actually find Kilton's design pretty similar to that of Tingle. So maybe he was the inspiration behind Kilton, creating a wacky, darker, and a little less absurd version of this iconic character. So in summary, there are a lot of roads Kilton's origin could take, and I didn't even get into all the great theories I've seen here today. I really do hope to see this guy return in the future. Similar to the Happy Mask Salesman, he's one of those characters that it's just so hard to read his true intentions, and further exploring that as well as his origin is something I'd love to see the series do in the future. Hey guys, thanks for watching, and since you made it all the way to the end, I'd say, that's probably a pretty good sign, that you should subscribe. I know I'd appreciate it, and I think you would also appreciate it, so yeah, thank you, thank me, yeah, you're welcome. I want to hear what theories you guys thought were the best. I'm on the boring road for once, and just think that Kilton is probably just a regular dude, but I had a lot of fun diving into these other ideas and supporting them the best I could. If you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up by hitting the conveniently placed thumbs up button below the video, and before you go, I wanted to point you over to another video you might want to watch. I mentioned the Creating Our Breath of the Wild 2 video earlier, so make sure you check that out if you haven't already, but if you have, and you're in the mood for some more similar content, I want to highly recommend this video by Minato Madlad, who shares a lot of similar ideas to what I outlined in that video. They even made this incredible map of what the Underground Kingdom could look like, and seeing that map just made me want these ideas to turn out true more than I could ever imagine. But yeah, seriously, go check out their video. I think you'll enjoy it. That is about it for me, guys. As always, you can find me on Twitter at XenogamerYT, join the Discord server with a link in the description below, and come by the Twitch streams every Friday night. I'm hoping to see you guys back here soon for a bit of a different video, so look forward to that, and until then, have a good one. Bye!